Welcome to the Leading Conversations podcast, sponsored by the Excel Leadership Network. On each episode, JD Pairing will have conversations with church planting pastors and leaders from around the country. You can learn more about how to connect with Excel at the end of this podcast. Let's join JD now and listen in on this leading conversation.
Hey, welcome to another Leading Conversations podcast with Excel Leadership Network. Today, we are very happy to have with us the great and powerful Jim Powell, all the way from Peoria, Arizona, via Peoria, Illinois. Isn't that right, Jim?
That's it, man. Peoria to Peoria, baby.
Thanks for coming on.
Yeah, thanks for being, glad to be here. Thanks for having me.
Hey, tell us just a little bit about your story, growing up, where that was, how you committed your life to Jesus.
Well, I grew up in the Midwest, had exposure. I had a grandmother that was a strong Christian, and my mother was a believer, and went to Sunday school class, primarily Lutheran churches. When I was about maybe fifth, sixth grade, my mother changed churches to a Missouri Synod church, which was more Bible believing than the one that we were attending. Went through confirmation class in junior high, passed the test, was told I was a Christian, but never really had a personal relationship with the Lord. And when I got into college, I went to college. I was in the world with both feet, and sort of considered myself an agnostic at that point. I was just doing everything a lot of people do in college, and was trying to live it up, have fun. Ended up flunking out of college with, I think I had a 1.7 GPA, and dropped out. And that's really when I sort of jumped in even more so. We really went hard into the world. And but what happened is that I got a job as a DJ in a nightclub. I was 19 years old. And
really, can you give us your DJ voice?
And I didn't do a lot of talking, but I had a mixer. So like this is mid 1980s, and I was like first generation mixer board with two keyboards. It's all digital now. So I bought a mixer board, and I would make these mixtapes. We would go to St. Louis and buy 12 inches and albums and everything, and I would do these mixtapes. So I got a job as a DJ at a nightclub, and they would have 500, 600, 700 people on the weekends. It was a pretty good sized nightclub. And so, but the thing is I would work from 9 o'clock until 1 or 1:30 in the morning on Wednesdays and Thursdays, and Fridays and Saturdays, I'd be there till 3:30 in the morning. Well, working on the evenings, and then I had a second job working at a pizza place, I wasn't hanging out with my friends. I had more time to myself because, like when I get off at 3:30, everybody else is winding down.
Everybody's around, yeah.
And so, so sometimes, you'd hook up in groups of people and things like that. But anyway, so I had more time to myself to be able to sort of be reflective, on my life, because, my rhythm is off from all of my friends around me. And I'm still, partying, all this kind of stuff. And one night, I don't remember exactly when it was, but I came home one night, and I was just drunk off my butt. And there was a advertisement on television for a book called Power for Living. You're old enough, you might remember this, but it was a guy named Jamie Buckingham had this book, and they had, professional athletes like Roger Staubach and Steve Barkowski were like, hey, we found power for living and found a purpose to our life, et cetera. And it was a free book. And I came home one night and I ordered this book and forgot about it. And about a couple weeks later, it came in the mail, and I opened this package. I'm like, what the heck is this book? And I sort of vaguely remembered, I think I ordered this one night when I was like, drunk or whatever. And so I got the book and started to read the book. And as I read the book, started to be intrigued when it came to section about, praying to receive Christ. I prayed the prayer. But JD, when it talked about in the book, the difference between Jesus as Savior and making him the Lord of your life, like, making Christ the center of your life. And they actually had some people maybe have seen this, but the chair illustration, where like has a picture of a chair and has, who's on the center, Jesus on the center, are you on the center of your life, and all this other stuff. And I remember reading them like, well, of course I'm in the center of my life, and I literally, JD, when I read that section about making Christ Lord, making him most important, I'm like, you know what? I can believe in Jesus, but this is just crazy. And I closed the book. I sort of tossed it aside. I'm like, I'm done with this. Like this is just nuts, right? And I closed the book. And you know how the Lord works, though, and it took maybe a couple more months of just sort of, moving slowly back and forth. And I went to Florida on spring break with a buddy of mine. We drove down to Florida, spent there for 2 weeks, and had a blowout. Came back, and when I came back, it was on a Sunday night, March 24, 1985, and I came home one Sunday, and I'm like, you know what? I'm just so miserable with my life, and I'm like, I can't do this. And I got down on my knees on the side of my bed, and I said, okay, God, you win. I'm gonna try to make you Lord. I'm gonna try to surrender to you and give you control of my life. And all I can say is I had a conversion experience that night in my privacy of my bedroom. Something happened that changed me. I woke up the next day. I almost immediately felt a desire to start sharing the gospel. And I'm like, I don't even know, like I felt like I was called into ministry that night, JD.
Wow.
But I'm like, I don't even know what this means. The only thing I knew was, very stoic Lutheran pastors in robes. And I'm like, that's not really me.
Traditional, yeah.
That's all that I knew. But I'm like, I just I knew I woke up the next day and I felt compelled to open the Bible, and it was like a new book. Like the words were just jumping off the page. Once you're converted, it's like the word just comes alive. And so that began a journey. In 1985, about a year and a half later, I went to Bible college in South Carolina, and then ended up getting my degree. And within 5 years, I was pastoring my first church.
That's that's incredible. I never would have pictured you for a DJ. And, that's just
well, listen, if you can ever come across a cassette player at a garage sale, I got some cassette tapes I can send to you from some of my mixes. But
I have so many cassette tapes. We cleaned out the garage a couple months ago. Boxes of cassette tapes of old sermons. So if you're having trouble sleeping, I'll send you some of those.
That's exactly right. Yeah,
all of that stuff. Wow. So there was almost kind of like an immediate call to ministry then.
It was, yeah. It just, I remember JD the first time when I read 2 Corinthians, and I read 2 Corinthians 5:17. If anyone is in Christ, they are a new creation. The old has passed away, behold, the new has come. I remember reading that verse. I'm like, that's my life. Like, these words, when you're not familiar with the Bible and you read these verses, you're like, you almost feel like it was written just for you. Because that was it. I had a conversion experience that was not my own doing. It was all the work of the Lord. And I felt this immediate call into ministry. I felt like a new creation. Within a short period of time, the Lord spoke to me very clearly about abstinence. And dude, I'm just telling you, it was so real what God did by his grace. He gave me the strength within a very short period of time. I had stopped drinking, stopped, smoking weed. I had, went from, being active to a life of abstinence until I married my wife.
Well, hey, let me ask this. I know you're an author. You've written how many books?
2.
Mm-hmm. What was there incentive for you to write just because of the impact that a book had on your life?
Well, yes and no. So the main book I wrote was a book on church culture, sort of the journey I had of my last church, which grew from 65 to almost 2,000 people, and just that journey of transitioning. I forget who the quote was attributed to, but I read somewhere someone said, that there's something beautiful about having babies, but there's something amazing about resurrections. And my heart, you're a church planter, which is awesome. And we need more church planters. But my heart has always been about resurrections. I love taking existing ministries and churches and trying to renew them and revive them. And that's just sort of my calling. We need both, right? And so when I went to this church that was very small and struggling and broken, I had this journey of just seeing the church by God's grace grow. And so I really recorded about that idea of transitioning. And when I wrote the book, JD, and this, I was writing it at a time when the book industry was transitioning. And I was actually doing some events with Leadership Network down in Dallas, Texas, and they were interested in helping partner with me to do the book. But they're like, hey, you've got to build your platform bigger, and you got to get a bigger platform and do all the stuff, try to get your platform. And then we need you to maybe shift the focus of the book to make it, because it was really written towards leaders, church leaders, about how to transition a church culture. We want it more universal to where the average Christian can read this and be more. And I'm like, that's not what I want to write. That's not what I have in my heart to write. And so I ended up doing self-publishing journey through Westbow Press, and I have no regrets because I wrote the book. Almost 10 years later, I can look at it and say it's what I wanted to say and who I wanted to say it to. And, it's still sold over 7,000 copies. And so very blessed to be able to do that.
It's a great book. Let's sell some books right now. Dirt Matters, is that right? That's the name of the book?
Dirt Matters, yeah. Mm-hmm.
And you can get that wherever books are sold, right?
That's right, yeah. Yeah.
Hey, when you said that one quote, that's what we use to recruit people into church planting. We say go into church planting because it's a lot easier to have a baby than it is to resurrect the dead.
100%, yes.
You're on the other end of that. Tell us where you said you were pastoring a church after 5 years. Where was that?
So my first church was a rural church in West Central Illinois. It was a rural congregation, and I'd graduated from college, and I had my Bible college degree. There was a church there needed some supply preaching. So I went and supply preached, and they kept coming back, and they said, we want to hire you as a first pastor. I'm like, I'm not sure I'm ready yet. But that was my first job. And then I went to seminary, was communing to seminary while I was there for about 7 years. It's a great experience. And then I went to, at one point I was pastoring 2 churches simultaneously. And then I went to Peoria, Illinois, and I was there for 21 years before coming here.
Talk about the transition from Peoria, Illinois, down to Peoria, Arizona. What was that about?
Yeah. So after, when I was at Peoria, Illinois, like I said, the church had grown. We had become a multi-site congregation. We had three locations. I was doing 4 weekend services and just got burned out. And it was my own doing. I'm an achiever, a driver, as you are, and I just did too much. That combined with my wife having some health issues, I just got burned out, and I just was not healthy. I was fatigued. I had no creativity. And so my church board was great. I took a little mini sabbatical. They worked with me trying to get healthier, but it just couldn't break through. And I took a little retreat with our family down to Florida. Coming back, we visited some friends in a place called The Villages, which is a 55 and up community there in Florida. We spent some time with them. And then driving home a short time later, we were driving middle of the night. Everybody's asleep in the car except for me. And the Lord just, I felt like he spoke to my heart and about pastoring a retirement community, gave me this vision. And I'm like, at the time I was 53 years old. I'm like, well, maybe in 10 years, I'll, go someplace and do this at the end or part-time or whatever. But it was a few months after that, I came back. We had a staff retreat. After the staff retreat, I just felt like, even though I wrote a book on church culture, when I got burned out and we had begun to go to, we began to have 3 campuses. We hired a new executive pastor that I began to delegate more responsibility to. And I really began to be more hands-off. And this executive pastor was a good guy. There was nothing malicious, but his vision of how to do church was different than mine. And there began to be a division in our staff between, I follow Jim and I follow Joel. Because I had an executive pastor that was very much a processor, like staff members to come and ask his permission. I was very hands-off, like, go make a mess, go do something. Like I was just go do stuff and hire people. And I like to hire people that were doers, that would get stuff done. He liked to hire people that were more conservative and, didn't want to make messes, but just were very efficient. Right.
Guardian type people.
Huh?
Guardian type people. Probably.
Yeah. Right. And so I had become too hands-off. We had hired 3 consecutive staff members, boom, 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 that I had empowered him to hire these staff members with our other staff, and I said, this is not the right person. We got the wrong guy or the wrong gal in one situation. Like, it's not the right person. Well, no, we can make it work. And, and I didn't want to overmanage. I didn't want to be a micromanager, and so I'm like, okay. So I acquiesced on all 3 of them. All 3 of them were failures, right? And it wasn't bad people, just not the right hire that we needed for the church, right? And none of them worked out. And so our staff culture had gotten it wasn't so much the church, it was the culture of our staff wasn't very healthy, and we took the staff retreat, and I'm like, you know what? It's going to take me 2 or 3 painful years to get our staff healthy again, because I had been too hands off. And, and that realization was, I'm already burned out. I don't think I have the juice, to go through that, another transition to get our staff culture back to where it needs to be to make the church healthy and to move forward. And at that point, I felt like the Lord said to me, the well's dried up. And so I made the decision I was going to resign in 6 months.
And and so you moved to a retirement community, and you're not really retirement age.
No,
Uh,
no.
and you've done a phenomenal job there. Talk about what has that been like for you?
Well, yeah, so it's great. After I made the decision to resign and we made it public to the church, I started looking for jobs. And one of the first churches that popped up was this church in Sun City, West Arizona. They were looking for someone with had experience in a larger church. Just everything. I didn't apply anyplace else, JD. I had other offers given to me, but I'm like, this is the only church I applied to. I felt like it's where I was supposed to be. I've been here about 4.5 years now, 4 years now, and I'm having a blast again. Ministry is fun. It's a different environment. Like you said, I came here at 54, in a church that's 55 and up, and a retirement community. So I don't even live here. I have to live outside because I'm not old enough when we moved here to live here. But I'm having fun. It's a great church culture. It's a different season of life. Our people are, as we always say, our people are on the back nine, all of them. And some of them can see the clubhouse, right? It's like, they're the last season of life, but a lot of these people, they still love the Lord, and they want to make a difference. They want to leave a legacy. They're teachable. A lot of them look back at their life and they're able to put things in perspective, a way you can do it 60, 70, 80 that you can't always do when you're running fast at 35. And so it's a different kind of ministry, but I'm having fun and enjoying myself. And I'm much healthier here. And I feel like we're building something very healthy and dynamic here long term.
Good. That's great. It's great to hear. It's great to see. Hey, give us just get a little insight on the people on the back nine that you deal with. What do we need to know about them as a whole? I should probably say me as a whole, that you just observed from people in their 60s, 70s, and 80s.
Well, yeah, I'll give you a couple of things. One is they have resources. A lot of our churches that are being planted, a lot of our young ministries, rightly so, are targeting people, young families in their 30s, right? We have our target audience. You go to, and that target audience is younger. That target audience often involves families, et cetera. I'm good with all of that. But you need to understand that so often, because a lot of our pastors are scared, are insecure, in my opinion, or they just have this idealistic view, they don't have time or energy to give to anybody over the age of 60 or definitely 70. But what I would say to you is that those people, they have resources. They have time, they have expertise, they have life experience, they have money. And a lot of them want to be a part of something. They want to be able to seed and to be part of something that's growing dynamic. They're at the age of life. They realize I've lived my best years in many ways are behind me. What can I do to leave a legacy? Like, how can I make a difference? And so a lot of them they want to support a ministry that's going to make a difference financially. They have time to volunteer that a lot of a 32-year-old with 3 kids doesn't have. They have this stuff. They just want to be seen. They want to be respected. But too often these pastors look at this and say, I don't have time for you because I got to reach these young families, because I got to build these numbers and I want to build this church. And you have these resources here that want to partner with you. They don't expect you to do everything to serve them. Some people do, but not all of them. But they just want to be seen. They want to be valued. And I think there's a great opportunity that's being overlooked in a lot of our churches.
There's just such a giant pool of baby boomers who are looking for something still. Yeah.
They are looking, and they're not done looking till they're done. And like I said, they're at the stage where they look back and they realize, maybe how many resources they wasted, how they maybe neglected their family, for the sake of their career. And they wish they could have those years back. You're able to look back when you get into that last season of life and you're able to see things in a different perspective. And one of the things that I talk about a lot, JD, and if I'm going to write another book anytime soon, it's going to be on this subject. I don't think a lot of our people under the age of 40, and I'm not judging, because they're bringing energy and passion and they bring certain things to the table that we have to have the same way I did when I was 25, 30. But I'm really concerned that our young pastors do not understand the difference between knowledge and wisdom. And we live in the information age. And especially when you talk about AI, you have access to endless amounts of knowledge. You can learn whatever you want to learn, but that's not the same thing as wisdom. Wisdom knows when to do something. Wisdom knows how to do something. Wisdom is able to contextualize knowledge, right? And we don't have enough wisdom today. We have all kinds of knowledge, and because people think I can Google this or I can use AI and I can get the right answer, that's all that I need. But you don't always have wisdom. Wisdom takes time to develop. Wisdom is much slower, but wisdom is what we need today. And I think some of these people that are a little bit older, they have wisdom that they can bring that is able to sort of balance out sometimes the idealism and the expectations we have with our youthful enthusiasm.
That's brilliant. Thank you for that. And somebody in that particular season of life, I think I'm on the back nine, but I think I want to play 27. That's what I want. That's what I'm going to do.
JD, that's what I would say for my people. We have, I got so many stories I can tell you about just how incredible the people here at our church, because it's a retirement community, there's a level of youth and vibrancy that you have among people in their 70s and 80s here. That's just, it's so invigorating. I did a wedding about 6 months ago for a couple that were both widowed that are getting married. They got married. He was 86, she was 85. They come to church holding hands. It's like, and I mean, it's just neat to see that because they're still living. They're still looking to their future. They're like, we're not done yet. We have people that are still volunteering for ministries that have these ideas to do stuff because they want to make a difference. Like you said, they want to play 27. They're not done until they're done, and they want to finish strong. And like I said, I think there's a lot of resources out there that we can leverage. And I'm not saying not everyone's a good fit, right? Because there are some people, as they get older, they become stuck in their ways. They become, they want to control stuff. But there's a lot of vibrant people that are beyond the age of 65 that can be a real asset in some of our newer, younger churches if you can find a way to plug them in.
Great stuff. Hey, let me have you leave us with this. You've already done this already, but give us another leadership tip. What would you say to leaders? Primarily, it's your book targeted leaders. That's kind of who I write for as well. What would you say for leaders that we need to know?
My biggest thing I would say that has helped me, but I think we need more of, is I think that leaders, they need to be willing to take what I would refer to as the inner journey, to really become more aware of our hearts. Who are we really? Because there's a level of spiritual maturity that I don't see enough of in the evangelical church today. And so often we define spiritual maturity according to behaviors, right? Are you reading your Bible every day? Are you doing this? Are you living a good moral life? Are you saying your prayers? And that's all true. It's all important. But true, Jesus didn't just live a holy life. Jesus was holy. He didn't just live righteous actions. He was righteous. It's who he was. He was God in the flesh. And part of our goal of maturation should be not just to do the right things, it should become the right person, right? To where I'm truly, my character is being formed from the inside out, as Larry Crabb wrote in one of his books. And I see a lot of pastors that I think are doing ministry that are not aware of their fear. They're not aware of the unhealthy dynamics, the desire to prove themselves, right? I need to be successful to prove myself. And there's an unhealthy drive sometimes in people who love the Lord. Just because you love the Lord doesn't mean there's not unhealthy desires inside of us. There's not unhealthy drives. I mean, look at JD, the last decade, how many pastors, megachurch pastors that we've seen that have not just fallen due to moral failures, but have fallen due to documented elements of bullying people and just ungodly, unrighteous behavior behind the scenes with their staff and their leaders. People that just run it like a dictator as opposed to like a Christian. And a lot of those is because people are not aware of their inner self. They don't feel like they can be transparent with the darkness inside of their life, and they're not being transformed internally, even though externally they're able to give these appearances of a godly, righteous life. We need more pastors that are willing to take retreats, that are willing to get dirty with the crap in their life, to take ownership of the dark side of who they are. I heard John Ortberg several years talked about, the dark side, right? The shadow mission that we have inside of us. But this idea of what's really driving my life and where is God in the midst of that? Truly finding my identity in Jesus. So one of the things I often tell young pastors is I take them to the story of Jesus' baptism. So when Jesus is baptized, we all know the story, right? This is my son whom I love and whom I'm well pleased. And so I say to people, what does that say? Well, obviously, Jesus is the Son, loved by the Father, he's well pleased. But what a lot of people don't really reflect upon is that those words were spoken to Jesus before Jesus did any public ministry. Right? Yeah. He had not healed people. He had not generated big crowds. He had not confronted the Pharisees. He had not gone to the cross yet. The Father was pleased with who Jesus was, not what he had accomplished. Most of us, JD, in ministry, we still feel this desire. We still feel this need that we have to prove ourselves, right?
We have to work hard for God to say, I'm well pleased.
Yes. And when I went to a counselor who worked with me on this in my 30s, and he said, do you think that God's pleased with your life? And I'm like, well, no. Right. Because I wasn't pleased with my life. I'm a type A hard driver, I have all these goals I want to do. I go to bed at night not happy with myself because I feel like I should be doing more. I should be achieving more. I have these high expectations for myself. And if I'm not happy with myself, it's hard for me to believe that God's happy with me. Right. That was a very unhealthy desire that was inside of me that I had to take ownership of. And I had to start working towards this lifelong journey of being able to truly find my identity in Jesus and to be able to accept the fact that God takes pleasure in me because I'm redeemed through Christ, and that God can love me even when I don't love myself. But that produces a healthier leader, right? It's a healthier place that I'm going out of. And I don't feel like I have to attach numbers to my self-worth to be satisfied with ministry or with my life. And I think that's a journey I would say that I just would like to see a lot more pastors take, to step into that journey to get healthier.
What's a specific practical step? Somebody's listening to this saying, yeah, that's kind of me. What would be your first step on that?
Great question. First of all, I would get acquainted with some writers who write in this language. I think a good, I know there's been some challenges with this person's life the last few years, but I think, John Ortberg has some teachings on this and some writing where John is able to translate some of the deeper spiritual thinkers to make it more practical. Dallas Willard is a guy, Larry Crabb, they've both gone to be with the Lord, but their writings, there's some Catholic writers that are great. Henry Nouwen, a book that I'm taking my current staff through that we're going to be doing in October that I think I read every year is called In the Name of Jesus by Henry Nouwen.
I need to pick that up. I tried reading Henry Nouwen. I guess I'm just not smart enough.
Read In the Name of Jesus.
In the name of
it is very short, very simple book, but he writes on the temptations of Christ, and he writes on the temptations of Jesus from a perspective that you've never heard in an evangelical church before. But yes, so some of this stuff can be hard to write because it's like they're talking different language. My frustration with Dallas Willard is like I have to stop every 2 pages to try to digest what he's saying. I mean, the guy's just writes, I'm like, what the heck? I can't ever get a rhythm because it's so deep. But you can listen to YouTube videos on Dallas Willard, and sometimes you can hear better what he's saying about these things. But I would say get a hold of some writers. Thomas Merton. There's some people out here that have these writings that are able to speak on a soul level that's different than what we just hear, parroted in the evangelical world. There's also, I think, look for, if you come across retreats, there's people like Ruth Haley Barton, who is doing great work with the Transforming Center and out of Chicago, does retreats. There's organizations like that. I'm trying to think. There's another one called, I'm going blank on the other organization, but there's some great evangelical organizations that are doing
when's the Jim Powell book on deepening your spiritual life coming out? When are you gonna write that, Jim?
Well, when I feel compelled to write it. So I don't feel compelled to write it, but I'm still, and I want to say this, JD, even though I'm talking about this stuff, it's a continual process, right? It's just true, true maturation, true discipleship, true. When you talk about like, I can conform certain behaviors. Like if you're really driven, like you can stop drinking, you can do certain things, right? But when it comes to transforming the heart, dude, that's a long journey. But I'm in the journey, and I feel like I've, by God's grace, made some progress, but there's a lot more to go.
Yeah, I think we're all there. By the way, those of you who are listening to the podcast, I would recommend the 100-day sprint through the giant materials that Excel offers. Just looking at those questions, what am I afraid of?
Mhm.
What am I trying to prove, and to who?
Yes.
And those type of questions that you get an opportunity to ask those questions in a pretty healthy environment. And, wow. And then you get around some other people that when you're walking into a situation, this happens to me, I'm walking into a situation and I know it's going to raise issues in my own life where I'm going to be trying to prove myself. I call one of my coaches, somebody else who's gone through that, and say, hey, talk me through this before I walk into this meeting. So, hey, I really
JD,
appreciate your stuff. Go ahead.
can I add on that? Because that's
Yeah.
those are the perfect questions. And you said two things. First of all, those are phenomenal questions we need to sort through. But the second thing is you talked about the environment and other people.
Right.
To take this kind of a journey, you have to take it with people. You have to be able to process with safe voices. And let me give you two stories just very briefly. I know we're done here, but I think it's worth listening to.
Sure.
The first is a book that transformed me, that helped me in this journey, is called Search for Significance by McGee's the last name. It's probably 30 years old, but he talks about how, these core fears drive our life. And then it has a bunch of, biblical things, and it has sort of like affirmation things you sort of affirm to yourself to help you retrain your thinking to see yourself the way God sees you as opposed to the way you feel. But that was a great resource that I had to do with somebody to help me see some of this stuff. So that's a great resource. The other thing I would say is, let me just give you a very tangible example of how this can change us. And I'm going to be very transparent here. When I was going through this journey, maybe 15 years ago, I had found a group of safe people. One of them was a staff member that was on this journey. And then I had a guy that was a member of my church who was a professional counselor, but was in this world of kind of this inside out transformation and asking these very difficult questions that reflect the heart. And JD, that week I had stumbled with online pornography. And I'm getting ready to meet with these guys. And I'm thinking to myself, I screwed up. And this is not like, the traditional accountability group is, JD, shame on you. You're going to be out of ministry. If you keep stumbling, you're going to lose your job, right? This journey we were on was not that way. It was like seeing myself the way God sees me and allowing me to, this kind of inside out. But I'm like, I've got to confess to these guys. And so we had this thing, and I'm like, guys, I got to tell you something really horribly embarrassing. But this week I stumbled and I looked at some pornography online, and I was ashamed. I was embarrassed. Remember, the one guy's a member of my church who's a professional counselor. The other guy's a staff member of my church. You talk about humility, right? The guy who was a professional counselor said to me, true story, JD, he said, Jim, thank you for sharing. I want you to know that I love you and I respect you more for what you just shared with me than I did before this meeting. And I thought to myself, dude, what are you talking about? And that day, JD, was a watershed moment and for me, understanding the gospel. Because if this guy can listen to me confess something that I am horribly ashamed and embarrassed about, he can hear me confess that, and he can look me with sincerity in the eye and say, Jim, I love you more. I respect you more as my pastor and as a friend. I love you and respect you more today than I did before this meeting. It allowed me to understand how the forgiveness of God works in my life. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it's amazing.
But if you don't ever have those kind of conversations where we're being authentic with people about the true nature of our heart, about how much anger I may have towards somebody in my church or my church board or whatever, or even challenges within my marriage or these struggles, if I'm not able to have those deeper conversations and wrestle with the questions you just referred to earlier with somebody, I'm never going to be able to process that in isolation. You've got to be in vulnerable community with somebody you trust to be able to see that kind of transformation.
That's just a great encouragement. And that's why we do what we do. That's why you're doing that in the church. And
Yes.
That's why we're doing that in our churches and with Excel, just being around people in a supportive environment, growing closer to God. So, hey, thanks so much, Jim. Thanks for your vulnerability. Thanks for your tips. And thanks for what you're doing. It's really cool to see people who need Jesus not being neglected, being seen, and God using them in a big way. Thanks for all you do.
And thank you for you and Excel Network. We need more church planters, man. So keep at it, bro.
Thanks for joining the Leading Conversations podcast. We hope that you found it both helpful and encouraging. At Excel Leadership Network, our focus is on the church planter rather than the church. If you'd like to find out more about us, visit our webpage at excelnetwork.org. Don't forget to subscribe to this podcast so you don't miss any future episodes. See you next time with another Leading Conversation.